So in about half a mile we get to speed back up. Let's go back outside the train. Oh, there's my graphics card not being so great. So CSX, the chassis system. What happened to the good old days when it was the Chesapeake in Ohio, the Baltimore in Ohio, the Seaboard line before they all merged? So, you know, another nice thing, there's a lot of interactive stuff. You can see the cars driving by. You'll go by some scenery and see cranes lifting, you know, bulldozers bulldozing, smoke coming out of the chimneys, and some of the industries, like I said, when you pull up and you have a load of stuff, it will actually unload your cars, which I think is pretty cool. Let's back off and you can get a bigger look at the lay of the land. You can see that, you know, there's a very definite geometry to how the trees are made and lined and planted in rows. When you're in cab, you don't really see it that much. When you get it from the bird's eye view like this, you can see it more. But here we are pulling this, I think there's 60 cars on this train, something like that. We can count them later, I guess. You know what, I forgot to turn my light on. So one thing about this game, it doesn't penalize you for making mistakes like that, driving with your light off, going through a red signal. Even though there are some scenarios that do, they automatically terminate the scenario if you do something stupid like that. That could be done a little bit better on some of the scenarios, but I think a lot of that is...
Detector milepost 0.0.
Has an automatic car detector thing looking for bad wheels as I drive over it. Go back inside, we'll listen for what he has to say about the wheels. Basically, it's looking for heat generated from bad bearings on the wheels of the cars. So it'll give me a report here in a little bit when the last car goes over. There's our car stretched out behind us. Those, I think, are supposed to be automobile racks, but they're way too short.
Detector milepost 0.0. No defects. Total axles 1, 2, 0. Train speed 2, 0. MEH. Detector out.
So they told me 120 axles, no defects, and these things I think are programmed automatically to give you a message in the cab while you're driving. And I think they're looking for faulty wheels, and I think what they do is look for heat. But again, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. There's probably detectors in there that are looking and sniffing and checking things out and actually counts the number of axles that go over and then sends a report to you through the rails themselves, I believe. So you get a report on how your train's doing. And they can actually really help you out, because if there's a problem, it'll identify what car it is. You can spot that out someplace, send it off to get repaired. So pretty amazing technology, actually. So our speed limit's now 30 miles an hour. You can't get this thing to go exactly the speed you want because it's like a notch kind of deal. So 28's pretty close. I can live with that. So our next signal's in 0.2 miles. It's green. Our next speed change 35 miles an hour in about a third of a mile. So red over green. I was just looking at that on Wikipedia tonight. That means something. Like red over green is like a switch or something. I can't remember. But all that stuff means something to an engineer. They have to be pretty aware of a lot of different stuff. here we are right here. That little white signal on the right side is going to change our speed limit to 35 miles an hour. There it is, 35. But we can't do that till the end of the train passes that. So we're just cruising. So here we are. You know, if you look at the God's eye view of this thing, the map view, it tells you the names of all these roads. And they're actually actual names of roads that I drive on. Now, whether the spacing is correct and their orientation compared to the railroad track is correct, I don't know. I'd have to go out and check. You could probably look at Google Map and kind of get a bird's eye view and see if it's fairly accurate. But, you know, it gives you a pretty good feel. We're driving in the eastern side of Michigan. Off to our left, you know, we're obviously heading south toward Toledo, Ohio. Off to our left is Lake Huron, which then funnels into the St. Clair River, which separates basically the tip of the thumb in Michigan from Canada, and then it widens out into the Lake St. Clair, which is a big lake, but not a great lake. Almost, but not quite. Didn't quite make it to that status. And then from Lake St. Clair it funnels down into the Detroit River, which once again separates Michigan from Canada. And then at the end of the Detroit River it opens up into Lake Erie. So those Great Lakes are off to our left. Off to our right is just the center of Michigan. And again, this is pretty accurate representation of what this area looks like. A lot of different industries. What you're going to see as you drive a train. Oops, forgot my horn. I'll give you one blast. You know, as you drive a train around the United States or even in Europe, I imagine, you're not going to see, you know, the glamour spots. You're going to see industrial spots, the places where people work. People aren't going to build huge mansions. Next to the railroad tracks. It's just not going to happen. So you're going to see more industrial stuff. You know, some of the older homes may be there, but I think that's pretty typical of what you're going to see in the area. So we still got a green signal. In about 1.7 miles, we're going to be slowing down to 20. Train's running pretty darn good. So let's take a look outside again. Now we're going to do a roll by here as we see our locomotive. You can see it's stuttering a little bit. There's my frame rate. Struggles to keep up at just under 30 frames per second. Uh-oh, I hear a signal, so it's time to get in and do our horn signal. Let's go back to that drive-by. I don't know if you get that on YouTube, but you can hear the rumble of those cars going over that crossing there, which is pretty darn cool because it just gives you the impression of weight and power, which is what trains are all about. When you think of how much weight this train is pulling all by its lonesome, pretty incredible. You can see those trees shaking around. One of the things I criticize about this simulator is I like the movement. I think that's pretty cool. They just need to tone it down a little bit so it doesn't look like, you know, having a tornado come through the area and threatening to uproot these trees. Not sure why that railroad crossing thing sounded. Second-hand cars. See anything there you like? No, we'll pass. A couple trucks in there too. Speaking of which, I want to get some videos of my European Truck Simulator 2. There's a store over there called Reams and Valley Drugs. Yeah, these things look like something you'd see in the Detroit area and suburbs of Detroit. You know, those look like buildings I would see around here. So kudos to whoever designed this thing. Now this one is the Saginaw Subdivision. We're doing this strain of grain scenario. It's pretty much drive the train, have fun while you're doing it, and when we get to the end, you go through what's called a portal, which is another really cool thing about this simulator. A portal basically transports your train off the map. And let me blow the horn here and I'll talk more about it. I gotta watch my speed limit too. You go through a portal and all of a sudden your train disappears. And not so cool with the train you're operating on. It's not a really legitimate way to end the session. But if you have an artificial intelligence controlled train, it's a way to have them simulate that they just went off to New York or Chicago or Atlanta or someplace else. They go through that portal and you know, you can just imagine that train went anywhere in the United States. And they can also appear through portals too. So pretty cool system actually. So as I'm running my train on my layout that I'm designing from Toledo, I can have a portal and a train coming from northern Michigan, a part of the area that I have not actually modeled, and it'll just appear, but it'll appear as I want it to, say carrying logs or something from up north and taking them to lumber mills, sawmills, whatever. And so that's what a portal is, and that's the way this scenario ends, is my train will go through a portal and just disappear. So great for AI, not a great way to end a scenario. So basically I'm just going to be tooling around, all of a sudden my engine disappears and my cars one by one as they go through the portal disappear as well. A little bit dissatisfying from my point of view. I think I would rather end up in a yard, stop the train, say, I have arrived, I'm here, rather than get halfway there and then they just say it's done. So this scenario, extremely simple, as long as I remember to blow the horn and speed up and slow down when I'm supposed to. That's all there is to drive in this scenario. And there's another thing I don't like about this one. That's the last car in my train. And did you notice what's missing? It doesn't have an EOT device, or in other words, an end of train device. There should be a red light on that thing showing that that's the end of the train, because we don't have cabooses anymore, right? I miss cabooses. I wish we had cabooses. But there should be a red light at the end of the train. It doesn't have it in this scenario. Now you can actually put them in if you designed this thing, or maybe I could modify it and add an end of train device. But this one does not have that. Oh, that's a railroad track, not a car track, so all right. Probably just a lot of people that live around here angry that I'm blowing my horn needlessly. It's a soccer field. I'm just going to blow my horn once. So obviously as you're playing this game you got to pay attention. A lot of crossings where you're blowing the horn, you got to watch the speed limit. And kind of difficult to do when you're trying to talk and think about things to say. Because I don't multitask well, apparently, because I can't talk and blow the horn at the same time. Here's a question for you guys out there. Now you saw there were two roads relatively close together. I don't think you can get the signals in, the way you're supposed to in that amount of time. What do real guys do in the real world? And I suppose I could go out and train watch and find out for sure. But do they just like give one blast and just kind of hold it through the entire thing? Or do they just kind of not signal the second crossing or what? I don't know. Now I saw on those videos I was talking about the other night, it showed some trains going through relatively minor crossings. And they would do it like I did, they blow it once or they wouldn't blow it at all. So I'm not sure what the rules are on that. So if you look at the map, like I said, you could actually see the names of these roads, and they are accurately named. I recognize those names. Whether they're accurately portrayed on this, I don't know. Now we're going to speed up to 40. Probably should have done that a little while ago. You guys are probably all out there screaming, "Hey, you moron, pay attention, you can go faster." I was telling you that I miss the days of all the different railroads that have kind of merged. That's just the way the world is operating now. I'm going to blow off the signals here for a while just so I can get up on my soapbox here and talk about stuff. I miss the days when we had the Chesapeake in Ohio and the Baltimore in Ohio and the Wabash and New York Central and the Pennsylvania, and they've all merged in, and I understand that's the way of the world, but I kind of miss all those different railroads, and I miss the days when they had cabooses. When I was really young, my aunt would take me in the car and we go out driving around and we go down and watch the train switching around the Detroit area. I grew up south of Detroit. We'd watch them switching, and I just loved doing that. And you'd see the cabooses, you'd wave to the guys as they go by. Those days are long gone as it's becoming much more efficient, and they're saving money by cutting on manpower and all that other stuff. But I kind of miss those days. And the Chessie system which is the train we're driving in this scenario today, is a prime example. They are a company that was actually made from the merger of a bunch of little railroads. You can see a parked engine on the side of the road as we're whipping by there. It was a merger of basically the Chesapeake in Ohio, the Baltimore, Ohio, and the Western Maryland railroads, and there was a whole bunch of even smaller subsidiaries that were kind of merged into that. They incorporated in 1973 into the Chessie system, and they operated that way through 1980 when they merged with the Seaboard Coastline, and they formed the CSX, or the CSX system, in 1980, and of course they're still in existence today. In the process, they inherited all their motive power and their rail cars and all that other stuff, but the CSX is basically what is left of all those other little railroads, and I kind of miss the days when they had all those different brands. So that's just the way I feel about it. So basically the Chessie system, which is what we're operating today, is one of the Class 1 railroads in the United States, and I found out that they own 21,000 miles of track, and they operate essentially on the eastern side of the Mississippi River in the United States, and they go all the way down to Florida and up into Canada as well. So it's a pretty major railroad, and they have obviously a lot of track and locomotive power and stuff like that. Where we're operating right now, which is, they call it the Saginaw Subdivision, between Saginaw, Michigan, which is up by the crotch of the thumb. If you look at your left hand, you have a built-in map of Michigan. The crotch of the thumb is right up where Bay City, Saginaw, and Midland is. It's called the Tri-City area. And this is the Saginaw Subdivision, and if you go down to where your thumb ends and your wrist begins, that's about where Toledo is. So we're running that distance right there. And I want to say, just guessing, that distance might be like 150 miles. Maybe 200 miles, something like that. And the Chessie system owns a major yard in that area. It's called the Rougemere Yard, which is in Dearborn. You can actually go over there and watch them switch. It's one of the major yards that they own. The other big yard that they own in Michigan is in Grand Rapids, another place I used to live, called the Wyoming Yard. And you can actually go by there regularly. In fact, I do that when I visit my daughter who lives in Holland. Go by that yard and you can see the CSX engines over there switching the trains as they're coming in and out and sending them on their merry way. So the Chessie system is one of the big railroads in the United States. It's dominating on the east side of the country, running primarily north-south, and they go as far west as the Mississippi River. So I'm speeding by 2 miles an hour, but that'll make up for the time when I was not going the speed limit before. Let's go take a look from the outside again. Blow my horn again. Excuse me. So here we are, some more industrial areas, warehouses, parking lots full of cars, a couple sidings here for storing some tracks. You can see the expressway off to the left. That's very accurate. You got divided highway there going north and south. Probably I-75 as it heads north-south. Now in little ways on this scenario, off to the left you'll see some airplanes taking off and landing, and that is actually accurate. The left side,
Milepost 0.0.
there's another one of those automatic milepost checker things. Anyways, Detroit Metro Airport off on the left side as you go south of Detroit. And that obviously is a major international airport. And they've got that modeled here, not accurately, but you'll see some airplanes taking off and landing there, which is kind of cool.
Detector milepost 0.0. No defects. Total axles 120. Train speed 33 mph. Detector out.
So again, I think those brown cars there are supposed to be auto carriers, auto racks, and they're not accurate. I mean, those things are really, they're 3 layers high. These look like they're maybe 2. So they're not tall enough. And actually from this angle, they don't even look like, maybe they're just covered hoppers or something. Covered gondolas. Maybe that's what they are. Makes me feel better. A lot of police cars around here. I guess that's accurate too. So this scenario, like I said, pretty straightforward, fairly boring. Hopefully you guys aren't enjoying and maybe getting a feel for trains. But there are some other ones I've done that are actually in the western states out around Montana, and those were just stunningly beautifully done. So maybe that'll be the next one that I film. I'll have to condense that quite a bit though, because the scenario, one of them took 2 hours to do, but I could film it, edit it, shorten it down, maybe spit it out in about half an hour or so. So I think we're coming up actually to the end of this route. We are. The end of days, we've already passed, and now you'll see what I mean by the portal. Now watch what happens as the engine goes through the portal. It's just going to suddenly disappear. Slows down and bing ba-bang, it's gone. Those cars are magically being transported a la Star Trek to Toledo, Ohio, or wherever their final destination may be. But that was the entire route that we just filmed, and this is what happens when you pass a portal. Now, if you disguise that behind some buildings, in some trees, you don't see it's actually happening. You just see the train disappear behind the buildings and stuff. You don't know that it's really disappearing when it's actually being teleported off of your layout and going somewhere else. Now, some portals are two-way, so they can actually take trains off and put them back on. Some are one-way only. They only either put them on or take them off. But you tell the portal what you want it to do. I haven't been counting the cars, but you can see all of our train is essentially gone. Ba-bing, ba-bang, we're done. So I hope you enjoyed that. That was the Trainz version. I do not want to save of the Saginaw Subdivision. And we just did the strain of grain. Hope you enjoyed that, and leave your comments below. I don't know if I'm going to edit this to shorten it down. It just took an ungodly amount of time to do this, but I may edit it down to make it more interesting to watch. But let me know about length and what you guys like, and hopefully you enjoyed that, and I'll see you later. This is Grandpa 1955, and see you later.